Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you, folks, for inviting me today and for coming to my program. You've given me the opportunity to do what I enjoy doing most, which is talking about gardening and plants to like-minded people who also like gardening and plants, as I know you do. So I'm talking today about creating a sensory garden. The title is a little misleading. It is a child sensory garden that I'm going to use to illustrate the program. But in fact, sensory gardens are for children and for adults. And they work particularly well with the two ends of the spectrum, children and seniors. But anyone can enjoy a sensory garden. So what I'm going to do in this program, I'm going to explain exactly what a sensory garden is, give you reasons for embarking on a project like this, a very worthwhile project, talk about the situations you may want to plant a sensory garden, who they're mainly for. And I'm going to talk particularly about what children learn from gardening. We are trying to make lifelong gardeners when we work with children. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. And I will give you a whole lot of other activities you can do with children and maybe with adults year round. Some gardening activities for summer and for the winter. So these are the children that you will see. And you know, if my picture and everybody's pictures in the way, you can move it over, take your arrow to the top and you can move it over and see the pictures a little better. But you're going to really be on cuteness overload during this program, because you're going to meet John and Lucy, who are going to illustrate my points. John is my grandson, and he was about 2 years old or so in this picture. He's now 19. And John has helped me in my garden. He's worked by my side as I worked by my grandmother's side. I followed her everywhere in the garden when I was little. And John is such a big help to me in the garden. At least he was. He's in college now, so I'm not going to be seeing so much of him. But John has definitely become a lifelong gardener, which is what we want. And I think you, in the promotional materials you received, you saw that picture of Lucy. She is 3 years old. She's the granddaughter of my very best friend, Janet. Janet and I worked together for many years. And then when Lucy was born in Charlottesville, Virginia, Janet moved down there to be near her. And she rented for a while. And this year she bought a house. And that's where we made Lucy's garden. So these are the people who are going to help me with this program. Okay. So what is a sensory garden? Obviously, it's about the senses, the 5 senses. It's when you choose plants for a garden and those plants enliven the 5 senses: sight, touch, sound, taste, and smell. It is just a great project to do because it's not just for children, as I mentioned. So, for example, I know you have a horticultural therapy garden project, and this particular type of garden would be great for that. I have helped regular gardeners too, home gardeners that are not elderly and not children. I've helped them create a sensory garden. So as I talk about the plants to choose and the style of the garden, I'll give you some tips on how to adapt it for the different gardeners that you're making the garden with, or showing them how to make. I am very much into healing gardens too, and a healing garden should touch on all the senses. When you create a healing garden, which is for people that may have someone in the home who is sick, with a serious illness like cancer or had a stroke, a healing garden can be very helpful. And also the elderly greatly enjoy a healing garden. I think all of us are going through so much stress right now with what is going on in the world and with COVID and everything, that a healing garden is very helpful. And a healing garden should touch on all the senses. I know some of you work in community gardens, as the Master Gardener group I belong to have 3 wonderful community gardens. And if you don't already, I do encourage you to make a sensory garden for children part of your project there. And you'll find that very rewarding. So we're going to talk about what type of plants we're using, annuals and perennials, and just how, what the process of making a sensory garden is. But before we do, why make one for children? Well, children learn through their senses. You know that an infant, when held by its mother, will touch mother's face. As she talks to her child, the infant will touch mother's lips. Then it's obvious when the child is listening to her voice, to the sound. And if you shake a rattle for a baby, the baby may laugh. They, as they get older, they find they do that. So they're listening to those sounds. Babies can smell their mother, there is no doubt about it. And so, and as the child grows, you know, little children put absolutely everything in their mouth. So it's through their senses that children learn. A sensory garden is a great way of teaching a child garden processes, how to work in a garden, what all about plants. And children who work in the garden, who work with you, and what do they learn from gardening? Well, they definitely get a love of nature, so that when they watch a plant grow, particularly, I've seen that if a child sees a plant growing from seed, they are so amazed and love that process. They love being outside anyway, playing in the dirt. So this love of nature as they watch the butterflies and work with the plants is very valuable. They will learn science and math skills. They learn to predict and measure and all those valuable skills. And socially, they, if you have more than one child working together, or you're working with a child, there's other people there, children learn social skills from that, and how to share and give and take and listen and all those things. And gardening is a wonderful way to teach children generosity. If you plant a row for the hungry and let the child help with the delivery of the produce, they learn to be generous. And in their own sensory garden, just have them pick some flowers and take a bunch to a neighbor who is sick, or just to a neighbor. That is a life lesson. And then the life skills, responsibility, independence, problem solving, it's all in gardening. So it's very valuable that children should become little gardeners. Some things we need to know about gardening with children. And as I said, I will also go back to the sensory garden for adults as well as for children. But when you're working with children, they do need to have their own tools, and the tools should be child size. There's Jonathan enjoying his first wheelbarrow. It's made of plastic. It's his size. He loved that little wheelbarrow. He was barely walking there, but he loved that. And there's Lucy helping her dad to water. She was a couple of years old there. And you see that her water can is child size. That's important. A water can's made of metal, very durable. And then Lucy is using the kit I sent her prior to making the sensory garden. I sent her the kneeler and the apron with tools in the pockets, and I sent her some little gloves. She did prefer wearing her mother's gardening gloves. That's okay. You'll notice Lucy's favorite color is purple. And then the picture you probably can't see because my head's in the way is my other grandson, Harry, who planted a tomato plant here when he was about 3 years old. Harry had a wonderful time doing that. He remembers it, but he did not become a lifelong gardener. It is not for everyone. It wasn't Harry's choice to continue gardening as it was with John's, and that's okay too. They need to have the experience before they can make the decision whether they're going to enjoy the gardening or not. But their own tools, very important. And we have to consider safety. And not just with children at all ages. Safety in the garden is important. And I have a strict rule of no bare feet in the garden. First of all, I have a lot of clover in my lawn. Well, actually, we don't really have any lawn here. It's just, we mow weed. I'm not a big believer in lawn. But the clover attracts bees, and stepping on a bee is not a good idea. And also the tools we talked about, it's so easy to hurt the feet if you're using tools in the garden. So for starting very young, I teach my gardeners no bare feet. For little children, no animal manures. There are harmful microorganisms And children are very vulnerable to these. So no animal manures, and likewise, no pesticides either. As you probably know, the coating of some bulbs and seeds are toxic. And I won't use seeds with children under the age of 3. And part of that is the putting it in their mouths. They become so much more reasonable as they get older and stop doing that. You don't want any harmful plants. So if you have want to grow roses, fine, but put them in the back of the border so the children don't touch the thorns. And no toxic plants. That is one of my beautiful foxgloves in my garden, which is lovely, but I would not put it in a sensory garden for children for obvious reasons. Okay, so planning your garden, your sensory garden. First of all, it's very important that when you plan, you involve the child. It's their garden. So right from the beginning, you plan with them. So you don't give them more than 2 choices though. Don't make it complicated, but involve the child in the planning and in all that you do. First thing you're probably going to do then is to choose a spot for the garden. Now, this was kind of difficult for me with Lucy because I'm in Pennsylvania and she's down in Virginia. So I talked with her Nana. We decided it was going to be at Nana's house. Nana is Lucy's main babysitter. She does go to a little playgroup now that now she's been vaccinated for against COVID. And so, but she spends a lot of time at Nana's house. So we decided we were putting it there. And Janet had just moved into this place and there were no flower beds, just a few shrubs. So Janet said she really wanted it at the front of the house. There was nothing else there. And that's an excellent idea when you're choosing your spot. Put it somewhere where other people will see it and admire it. So the neighbors can see Lucy's garden. Lucy arrives at Nana's house, runs up the path right to her garden to check it out every day, every single day, and to do whatever tasks are needed. I also wanted it to be in an area of full sun so that I could have the best choice of plants. And fortunately, Janet's house faces south, so this is a full sun garden. When you're gardening with children, whatever type of gardening you're making, and I remember starting when I gave Jonathan his own vegetable garden to make. He didn't want to plant in rows. He had his own idea where he wanted his plants to go. So you have to be flexible and let the child make choices and go along with them. That's important. And always, always look for the teachable moment. There'll be lots of them. And I'll show you a couple that we came across when I was working with Lucy. So the first thing we decided to do when I arrived in Virginia, and Lucy knew me well from FaceTime, and she's been here and she didn't remember that very well, but we reacquainted ourselves and she was really, really excited that she was going to make a garden. And I decided really that we would get the plants first before we actually started doing anything, because with children, they need something to keep them motivated. And I thought once she had the plants, she'd be really want to prepare this ground and do all the rest of it. So we went to the garden center early on, and Janet had scoped out garden centers for me, and she found the perfect one. And when I go to a new garden center, the main thing I look for, whatever the size of the garden center, and kind of variety is important, but what I look for are healthy plants. And this garden had mainly extremely healthy plants. So we got there, and the plants I'm looking for needed to be disease and pest resistant, bearing in mind that we're not going to be using any pesticides. And that information is on the label, as I tell my older gardeners when they start choosing plants. Always read the label. It will tell you the conditions the plant needs, whether it wants full sun, how much water, and whether or not it's disease and pest resistant. It's important to read that information. I wanted some durable, sturdy plants, because this we took for Lucy. I wanted to plant different sizes and plants that are easy. Now, we had decided that as I lived so far away and I was going to be there for such a short time, that I was not going to dig a garden. If Janet wouldn't have done a soil test, we decided we were going to use plant boxes for Lucy, because then I could control the soil that goes into it and avoid weeds and what have you. So our garden is going to be quite small. I'd asked Janet to get a 4x8 bed, and she wasn't able to get that. So she got 2 4x4s, and they worked out very well. And I'll show you why. But it wasn't a lot of space to show a variety of century plants. So we just bought one of each plant. Now, when I coach my gardeners and when I do garden design, I tell them to avoid one of each plant. We call that the onesie syndrome. You know, you go to the garden center and you see a plant you like and you think, I'll have that. And then you see another one, I'll have that, and so forth. And then in your bed, you have one here, one there, one there. And that does not make an attractive design. But for the purposes of children and this particular instance, if you don't have much room for older people, if they have only a little patio or a balcony, pots and grow boxes are perfect. So that's why we had 2 small grow boxes for Lucy, and we just bought one of each plant, which is not my usual method. I also wanted to include seeds, because seeds are another special learning tool for gardeners. So let's see what plants Lucy chose. First of all, we discussed the senses and what they were. And Lucy's going to learn all about the senses, probably in kindergarten or first grade, but now she knows already. She knows very well what the senses are. So we talked about smell, and I had her touch her nose and say, when you're using your nose with a plant, that's the sense of smell. And then we did the same for touch. She wiggled her fingers. If you touch a plant, what you feel, the sense of touch. hearing, she pulled her ear, and sight, of course. And then finally, we talked about taste. And I made it very clear to Lucy that she could not taste any of the plants without permission from me or Nana or her mom or dad. Only an adult could give her permission to put a plant in her mouth. And I told her some plants really would hurt her and make her sick. So taste, she knew what that was. And when she was clear on her senses, we started looking for those plants. The obvious one to start would have been sight, because that's the first thing you see when you walk into a garden, is you use your sight. But we happened on lavender first. And it's such an obvious one for the sense of smell. And Lucy, when she touched it and then put her fingers to her nose, was enthralled and had a big, big smile and definitely wanted that lavender plant. Now, you need to know every plant we picked, we got her a card, one of the garden center cards, and she carried every plant to the card. And the lavender was the first one there. And then other plants for the sense of smell, she was familiar with the smell of catmint. She has kitty cats and Nana has one, and they like their catnip toys. And so Lucy knew they liked it because it had catnip inside. And then she was delighted to find the plant that's catnip. And so for smell, we picked that. And we were fortunate to find the most beautiful scented geranium called Attar of Roses that was absolutely delicious smelling. By the way, I have put the genus names next to the common names, as you can see. I didn't put in the species name because for lack of room, so it's just the genus, but you get the idea. So then we looked at plants for touch. And again, obviously, lamb's ear. She loved lamb's ear, and I always had lamb's ear in my garden. And when the children were little, well, not just then, even older children, when they arrived at my garden, the first thing they do is stroke the lamb's ear leaves because they feel so special, soft and lovely. So we purchased statues, and Lucy herself found a yarrow. All of the plants she sniffed first. The yarrow, she said, this feels different from the lamb's ear. And it is, it's rough to the fingers, a little spiky. So we decided to buy a yarrow. The one she picked wasn't the healthiest looking thing. It had broken flowers on it, and I kept moving away from it and she kept going back to it. So I was able to switch to a more healthier plant, and she purchased that. More plants for touch, of course, hens and chicks. We got two different sorts, very different. The jade rose was a beautiful pink color and a different shade, but that was really lovely. And we got celosia. Now, my celosia picture on my computer is covered by your pictures, but that's okay because I think you're very familiar with that picture. This is the picture that you use for promoting this program. And a couple of reasons for picking the celosia. And this is important too. So of course, the touch, the beautiful, soft blooms, different, very different from many other plants. And Lucy just loved that and realized they were for the sense of touch. But the other reason I picked it, because plants, and when you garden, and please tell your adult gardeners this, that gardening should be about evoking memories and creating new memories. So evoking memories. This particular plant was Lucy's grandfather's favorite, one of his favorite flowers. That's Janet's husband. In fact, he had bought me one for my garden when they visited one day. And so having that memory of her grandfather was important. And you're about making new memories too. With the older, with elderly gardeners, some of them are starting to experience dementia. Working with Alzheimer's patients, it has been found that they can see a plant maybe from their youth or from their own garden, and it brings back all them. I saw that with hollyhocks. A patient with dementia would see the hollyhock and knew what it was and remembered. Evoking memories, and you're making this sensory garden with children or with some elderly people, and you are making new memories. And that is an important aspect of gardening. Then we look at plants for taste. Janet, of course, was with us, Nana, and she suggested the oregano and the basil because Lucy loves pizza. So Janet said, if we grow those, then she can see the application. And I thought that was a great idea, and so did Lucy. The oregano, of course, could have been picked for smell too. And the basil. And another good plant for smell is mint, different types of mint. There were so many plants we could have chosen other than the ones we did. And I'll give you the names of a few more later. I told you we were looking for seeds too. Lucy told me that her favorite vegetable was carrot. So we bought 2 packets of carrots, the short and sweet, and another one, I don't have the packet, and I didn't take a picture of the packet, and I don't remember what it was called, but it was the long skinny one. So we had 2 different types of carrot for her. So we bought those seeds, and those were for taste. And then we started picking out plants for sight. And believe me, there are so many. So we said, Lucy, just pick the ones you love so much. Well, guess what? Her first one was purple. Of course, the pincushion plant, her favorite color. She also chose 2 types of petunia, a red one and a white one. And she also, I wanted her to purchase, let's take a couple of butterfly weed plants. So Lucy said they don't have any flowers on them. So talk about a teachable moment. there was a beautiful display behind the butterfly plants that showed the monarch butterfly. And I explained to Lucy how that butterfly that was her favorite butterfly, that this was the butterfly's favorite plant. They laid their eggs there. It was their favorite one of all. And I also showed her the label and said, if you look at the label, it shows you what the flower looks like. It shows you what the plant will be when it's fully grown. So you can choose it even though it doesn't have flowers. Look, this is what it will look like, and it will attract the monarch butterfly. So she was happy. She took 2 of those. And she also chose a blazing star liatris that wasn't in flower yet. And again, she looked at the label and she liked the blue spiky flower, and she liked its tallness and how it was different from the other plants. She chose this coneflower, the red ombre. Obviously, she was very drawn to it. And this one would do well for touch too. As Lucy pointed out to me, she said it's spiky and it's pretty. So that was another choice. That's not a very good picture of lantana, but you all know what lantana looks like. And she chose that because, again, it's one of her favorite pretty flowers. You will notice that your zone and my zone are very, very similar. And you'll notice I've mixed in some annuals with the perennials. The celosia is an annual. The petunias are annuals. The lantana is annual in our zone. So they're not all perennials. And Lucy will learn from that when they don't come back next year. So, and as I told you, she sniffed everything before she decided which sense it was for. And this penstemon, she picked that because I happened to say that those pretty red flowers attract hummingbirds. So obviously she wanted that plant. She calls it her hummingbird plant. And we added a penstemon to our list. Then for sound, I'm afraid we were only able to find one plant for sound, and that was the false indigo. Again, no flowers. So I told Lucy that Jonathan, when he was a little boy, and Harry, she knows Harry and Jonathan, my grandchildren, that they loved the false indigo. The flowers would turn into seeds in a pod that when you shook them, it made a really interesting sound. So I said, I think this would be a good one for sound. She said, yeah, I do too. So I said, well, which one do you want? I showed her, gave her a choice, the blue one or the white one. And she chose the Blueberry Sunday. Both of them were in the Decadence group. And she chose the blue one. And when she was finished, she loaded the car herself. You can see, by the way, that last plant is at the back there, the tall one, a nice, healthy plant. All the plants were healthy. I'm very, very pleased with them. So she loaded the trunk of the car with just a little help arranging them. And then she went, ta-da, a wonderful job done. And she was really excited that we were going to go home and plant them in her very own garden. So I told you that we decided on planting boxes, and they worked well. We put them side by side in next to the driveway where Nana drives in with the car and Daddy drives in with the car, so they'd be seen right away, with a space between big enough for her little red chair that she could sit on and admire her plants. If you're making a garden with older people, or you're making a regular garden not in a planter, but a flower bed, then you will have a nice curvy bed. You can use pathways for the senses, so they make different sounds like crunching gravel, as well as or moss or soft grass or even pavers. You would put a group of chairs in the garden for the gardener to sit and admire the flowers, and it would look different. But this looked great for Lucy. So we placed the boxes where we wanted them, as I said, full sun. And then the first thing we did was line the plant boxes with cardboard, and we wet the cardboard. Now, Janet had plenty of cardboard boxes because she just moved into this house. So finding cardboard was no problem. And why did we use cardboard? I told Lucy we were putting the garden on top of the lawn. Nana mowed the lawn before we started, so the grass was really short, but we put down the cardboard to stop the lawn grass from growing up, and we wet it to help it with the process of breaking down. It would break down eventually, kill the grass, then break down and make a nice compost there. So then you fill the planter. The third thing you do is fill the planter, and we bought back soil. I chose some back soil from a big box store that it was soil specially for raised beds. So I didn't have to worry about making my own soil mix. And we just emptied the soil in there and then leveled it off. Before planting, we arranged the pots where we wanted them. The bed on the left, you can see we put the taste plants together. It's a good idea having plants for taste together, and then there's no confusion about which plants the child can put in their mouths. Just that front row there is what I told Lucy. And we put taste and touch and the sense of touch and taste and smell in the same box, because in the other box we had a lot more plants for sight and only one for the sense of hearing. But Nana donated a bird bath, which is great to have in a sensory garden for whatever age. Have water. If it's a garden big enough that you can have a water fountain, or you've got hearing there, and it attracts the birds that are singing, again, it's hearing. And these beds were placed close to the bird feeder. So the birds were very evident, which was one of the sound things. Remember, we only got one plant for the sense of sound. I could have bought a grass. Muley grass is wonderful. But it still grows 3 feet wide. I just didn't feel we had enough room for a grass. Then in the other bed, you can hardly see them hanging just above the lavender, but on a metal hook, we hung a wind chime, which was made up of glass rather, hummingbirds. So we did have something else for sound right there. But we put the plants together for light sensors. Then the next thing you do, the 5th thing you do, is you plant carefully. Now, I know you know very well how to plant. Lucy was fascinated with the planting. She watched me. I showed her how to take the larger plants out of the container, and she was able to do some smaller ones herself. She dug all the holes, and I explained how the top of the soil should be where the top of the soil is in the plant pot. And she understood that. And then her favorite job of all was teasing the roots. I showed her plants that were pot bound and the roots were too tight. So I said, you loosen them by gently pulling them out. And that's called teasing them. And then I really did tease them. I went, la, 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 la. You're a naughty root. Well, you can see she loved that. For days afterwards, we'd be traveling around in the car, sightseeing. She'd be in her little chair in the back seat going, tra la 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 la. And her daddy said to me, thanks, Pam. And then we sowed the seeds finally. I explained we would put the string across so that we get a nice straight channel to put the seeds in. And I made the indentation along with the tip of a tool. And then Lucy was very good at sewing. I tipped some onto her hand, and with the other hand, she picked them off and gently sprinkled them into the groove we'd made, and then covered them over with the soil. And I think I can safely say the carrots, as you will see as we go on, were one of the most successful plants we planted. She had such a bumper harvest. It was great. So then she was finished. Oh my gosh, she was so excited. But I said to her, I don't think you're quite finished yet. Gardeners always, well, usually put some ornaments in their garden. And you've got the bird bath and you've got the wind chime. But, you know, they may put in a statue or some other ornament that they like. And I think it would be a good idea if you had another ornament in each box. And so we needed to take a trip to Home Goods, which was a lot of fun. We found all sorts of ornaments that were suitable, and I spread them out. We put them in a group on the floor in Home Goods. I don't know what the other customers thought we were doing, but she had a whole lot to choose from. And she chose nothing that I thought she would choose. She chose a white elephant with a little crown, and she chose a gnome with a red pointed hat. And she gave them both very elaborate names that I don't remember, but that they just completed her sensory gardens. And so then she dressed up in her fairy outfit and she did a fairy song and dance around her gardens and waved some magic that the plants would flourish, and they certainly did. Great job, Lucy. So that there are other plants you can choose. You can design, for instance, with adults for taste, a blueberry bush, you can grow fruit and get a beautiful design feature and a productive plant that way. Their grasses for sound, as I mentioned before. There's so many things you can do. And another plant that's really good for sound, the money plant. And my grandchildren love that. But the reason I didn't get a money plant, I walked right past it. I didn't want Lucy to even know about it at that point. But the reason I didn't get one is that the first year it does nothing. And I felt that Lucy needed to see immediately. But for adults, as well as children, the money plant, it's just like a bush the first year. And then the second year, it grows those wonderful dangling silver, they rattle together and make a very interesting noise. So they're great for sound. And then for sight, there are so many that whatever are the favorite plants. For scent, if you have plenty of room, peonies are delightful. Lots of other plants you could choose when you're planting for adults to make a real nice design. And you're not going to have the onesie syndrome. You plant in waves. So when you're making your garden with adults, it's a good idea to discuss, to have a list of suitable plants to take to the nursery with you. Actually, I did have a list that I took to look at when I've done quite a bit of research before I took Lucy to the garden center. But if you have an idea which plants you want, a sketch of the garden and where the plants will go will give you a better idea whether you need 3 of a plant or 5 or just one if it's a focal point. And you will like to have statues, maybe climbing plants are wonderful, and arbor. There's so much you can do to make the sensory garden just absolutely wonderful for anybody, really. Okay, so how about a few more gardening activities, year-round gardening activities. A bean pole teepee works very well. You take 6 bamboo canes about 8 feet tall, tie the top tightly with string, open up the legs, push it into the soil, and then you can plant any sort of pole bean. My preference is the runner bean Scarlet Emperor. Scarlet Emperor is an ornamental bean, but it still has beans on it that you can eat. They are a little tougher than regular pole beans, but they're still tasty. And if you grow them until they have their seeds, the bean seeds inside are speckled and look wonderful in a winter soup and taste good. So the runner bean Scarlet Emperor makes a good bean pole teepee. You could grow a pizza garden, a circular garden divided into wedges. Put tomatoes in one, green peppers in another wedge, onions in another wedge, garlic in another. Or you could just grow colorful flowers in each wedge to make it look like a pizza. Or if there's more than one child making the pizza garden, then let them have a wedge each. A sunflower house is fabulous. for a sensory garden for children, if they have the room, there's plenty of room, or for in a regular size garden, in a good size garden. And the way you make that, you grow your sunflowers in a circle or in a square, leave a space for the entry, tie the tops of the flowers loosely just below the blossoms, and then inside you can put down a bit of rug or a blanket, or better yet, plant some thyme for a ground cover, very sensory. If it's part of the sensory garden, then that makes a perfect bed inside the sunflower house. Another thing about a sunflower house, as opposed to a beanpole teepee, my experience with beanpole teepees is that some children are very afraid of the bees, and the runner bean scarlet emperor attracts a great many bees. And so if you grow a sunflower house, the bees are all at the top and the children are more comfortable in there. Having said that, I like to try and reassure children and adults. I have adults who come to my garden and they're afraid of all the bees. I have a meadow full of bees. And I had someone come this summer, did not want to walk through it on the path even because of the bees. And you have to explain that the bees are looking for pollen and nectar. They're looking for the pollen in flowers. I'd say to the child, you are not a flower. They will not land on you because you don't have what they want. And I try to reassure them that the bees will not hurt them, just ignore them. And that is helpful sometimes. Another great summer activity is a rainbow garden. Choose a plant for each color of the rainbow and plant it in waves, and that looks absolutely gorgeous. Yellow and orange marigolds, red petunias, purple, verbena, all sorts. I'm not verbena, bananas, go on, see you in a moment. Anyway, you will pick all the colors of the rainbow and make a beautiful rainbow garden. And then in the winter, there's some great gardening activities that you can do. Sprouting seeds. Yeah, this is a great project. I'm sure you did it as a child. So I did. So what you take, I'm sure you've realized by now that I'm from England, and what we would do there when I was a little girl is that we took an empty jam jar, a jelly jar, a large one. You can use a canning jar if it's clear on the outside. And when I was a child, we used to line it with blotting paper that we had made wet. The dampened blotting paper, we'd line it inside round the glass. Don't have blotting paper anymore. I guess we don't use ink anymore. So now you can use a paper towel. Didn't have paper towel back then. I don't remember what we did without paper towel. I guess we used cloths instead of paper. But paper towel, damp it, line the jar, and then put some large seeds between the damp paper and the glass. So you would use bean seeds, zucchini seeds, that sort of thing. And then the child can watch them grow. can make some predictions, can measure them, lots of things to do with them that is fun for a winter activity. Or you can make a mini greenhouse using a foil pan, repurposing a foil pan and placing it in a plastic bag to make a mini greenhouse. So you put the damp paper towel on the bottom and you put seeds over the bottom. Again, the larger ones work well. Zucchini and red beet and cucumber and beans. It's a good idea when you put down several beans. Once they start growing, you may forget which is which. So just map them, do a little drawing of where you put them in the greenhouse. And then again, that is a great activity for children. Children love to grow a garbage garden. And I bet you did this as a kid too. And for this, you take a pie plate and cover it with pebbles, little stones, and water. And then you cut the tops off root vegetables. So a carrot, a red beet, turnip, parsnip, and put them on the prepared plate and watch them grow. And a great gardening activity for winter is caring for houseplants. So this isn't just for children by any means. And I think having houseplants around you in the winter is so important. I know I need them, although I have to say caring for houseplants, not my forte. You can't see behind me very well here. I have a whole lot of my houseplants back here. I put them there just for you to see, and unfortunately you can't see them very well. But houseplants for children, the real little kids can sponge off the leaves with a little sponge. They can spritz them with those plants that need misting with a little spray. They can do that. Then older children can remove the dead leaves, and they can also help you pot up the plants when they need going higher. So, and what about spider plant? That is great for teaching propagation, because they can just nip off that little spider at the end and put it in, just put it in a jar of water to get its roots first, or put it right in the soil and you've got another spider plant. So that's a great activity. Take the child to the big box store and have the child pick their own plant and guide them to a real easy plant like pothos that you know they'll be successful with. And then something I teach children and adults, something you can encourage your elderly clients to do. When a plant fails, and they'll fail, believe me, I'm there, as I said, houseplants are not my forte, so they do fail. And when they fail, I use the acronym PLANT, P-L-A-N-T. P is for place. Was the houseplant put in the right place? Maybe it was too near to a radiator for example. L is for light. It's so important when we acquire a new plant to read that label. I tell the children this, I tell adults this. Read the label, it will tell you what sort of light that plant likes. If it is not in the right amount of light or too much light, it will fail. A is for air. There should always be good air circulation around every plant. Did you smother some little plant with two bigger ones? Is that why the little plant failed? N is for nutrition. Again, it says on the label when they need feeding. And then T is for thirsty. Did you give the plant too much water or not enough water? I tell everyone that I don't use the water gauges that you can buy to stick in and find out if the houseplant needs watering or not. The way to do it that's most reliable is to feel the soil with your finger. Feel the soil. And if it's dry, it needs watering. And I found that it's not, it doesn't work to have 1 day a week when you water your plants, like always water them at the weekend or something like that. Some plants need watering more often, and some just don't need watering every week. So feeling the soil is the way to check whether or not they need watering. So caring for houseplants, there are lots of other summer and winter activities you can do, but those are some of my personal favorites. I said I would show you some other activities out in the garden, and it's time for my wonderful grandson, John, who builds miniature gardens, to show you how to do that. I'll be going back down to see Lucy in the spring, and our next project is going to be a miniature garden for outside. And John has made 5 for me, and this is the procedure for doing that. First of all, you find a container, and a repurposed container is best. It must have holes though. So that container that John's using there is had a hose in it, curled around in it. So we took the hose out, and my husband, Pappy, put holes in the bottom for John. And then I like covering holes in pots with weed block fabric. I find that so easy to do. But you know, you can use broken clay pot or an old pantyhose or a coffee filter. Anything that covers the holes, allows the water through, and stops the soil from going through. And then the next thing you can't see because my picture's in the way probably if your computer looks like mine, but John put a few inches of rocks in the bottom, and then he filled the pot with a good potting mix, a soilless potting mix. We used an organic one. And then he added miniature items. And the most fun about this is like when you plant a garden, you go to the garden center, well, you find a store that sells these miniature items, and which is often a garden center. And you can get anything these days: houses, little people, fairies, bridges, garden furniture, arbors, seats, you name it, you can get anything. So John And if you're doing this with an adult, you know, you can make these for indoors with your seniors. And I have done that. And what we have done is they've got their container and we put a piece of paper over the top and drawn around it. So they have a piece of paper, the piece of white paper, the size of the container they're using. And then just draw in, sketch in where you're putting plants and where you're putting the little ornaments and the paths and what have you. And the best plants for this type of garden, in my opinion, indoors they work well, and in outside in a shady area, miniature hostas are fabulous. They come in every shape and striped, different size leaves, but the miniature hostas are perfect. So we always put lots of those in. John always put them in his miniature gardens. He also, for the ones he placed in the sun, he would use hens and chicks. He used moss a great deal, makes great lawn, various types of mosses, and a miniature sedum, a tiny star sedum he has used as plants for his miniature gardens. And then he would water them. And as I said, he made several for me. I'll show you some more. Oh, that's the one you just saw him making. And you can see the hostas there and some sedum and the moss. And he has a little fairy boy with a bluebird under an arbor and a bridge. He used marbles for the water and then pebbles, little bits of rock for the path. And there's also a birdhouse there near the bridge, if you can see that. He gave all of his gardens a name. This was his bluebird garden. He made a garden in a baby's bathtub. And I showed you a picture already, and it would look very different. This is because he changes them up. You know, he'll take everything out, refresh the soil, and put everything in a different place and change things around. And that's what he did here. This particular garden is one of my favorites. You can see it, something red at the bottom right. That's a little red bicycle. I love that little bicycle. And the tub, the container that it's in, is an old tin bath for a baby. And it didn't need holes put in the bottom because it got rust holes. And it was Pappy's bathtub when he was a baby, my husband's, which the grandchildren absolutely love because, first of all, they don't believe Pappy ever fit in there. And this is giving it a whole different look. He got a pot of purple and white petunias, planted different petunias in front of the flocks and made a lovely vignette one year. And this is shows you how you can repurpose. This is his castle garden. And this was a water fountain that sprung a leak, and we didn't know how to fix it. So John planted hostas in the bottom, and on the next level, he put a castle out of a fishbowl, and he put some glass beads around it for the moat. And then on the top level, he put some moss and sat a fairy. And I had been the one who taught John how to make his first miniature garden. And one of the things I taught him, which is important, is about scale. And he really kept to that in all his gardens except this one. So I said, John, how will the fairy ever get into the castle? And he said, he was about 8 at the time. He said, oh, Nana, don't you know fairies are magical? That's how she makes herself small when she wants to get in the castle. Miniature gardens can be in ground. This is one he did at the edge of a flower bed. There was a very large grass behind it that shaded the hostas. So although it was actually a full sunbed most of the time, he was able to plant those miniature hostas. And he was older when he did this one. I think he was about 14, 15. And he did it entirely himself, I have to tell you. He prepared the area. In fact, I have a picture somewhere. Maybe later on in this, I have a picture of him preparing it. But he's very talented with gardening. And I have to stress again how important gardening is with children, because that's how you get lifelong gardeners. There it is from a different angle. Beautiful garden. And John, there he is on the right, preparing that particular bed that he was amending the soil and getting it ready to put an in-ground garden. Yeah, I guess he was an early teenager there. And you can see him on the left. He would grow vegetables and flowers that in my garden that we would enter in the local fair, the West End Fair, West End of Monroe County. And John won lots of blue ribbons, and his nasturtiums that year won Best of Show. So there's Lucy with her carrots. What a wonderful bounty she had. And she loved to pull them and wash them and eat them. So a few tips for gardening with children. You need to visit the garden each day, monitor it. Allocate tasks in a fun way. You can put the tasks on a spinner and spin it, and where it falls, that's the task the child does that day. Or use a garden calendar that you cross off the tasks, hang it in the child's bedroom. But you're going to emphasize fun and creativity, have them draw pictures of their garden, and celebrate their accomplishments. When the garden is complete, have a garden party and invite family and friends and have a great celebration. And that is the end of my program. I just want to say that when you garden with children, not only will the plants grow, but your children will grow too. So now, maybe I could